Well, Treasurer Joe Hockey has delivered his first budget, pledging to eventually get Australia back into the black. The Abbott government is aiming to reduce the deficit to $29.8 billion next year and $2.8 billion by 2017-18. A $20 billion future fund for medical research will be set up. From 2016, universities will set their own fees. People under 30 will have to wait 6 months to receive unemployment benefits. And as expected, a deficit tax will be introduced for those earning more than $180,000 per year. And the fuel excise will rise twice a year in line with inflation. The Treasurer has told Australians that the days of borrow and spend must come to an end. John, your reaction to the budget?
Look, I agree with those two sets of comments, but I was surprised by a couple of things. I mean, the inequity that's still there in this budget. I mean, the fact that they've got a tax on high income earners, a deficit levy, which raises about $3 billion. At the same time, they're taking about $12 billion out of pensioners, youth and families. So the heavy lifting is unevenly distributed. On the age pension, I'm surprised they've just looked at the age pension on the expenditure side, when the big concessions are in superannuation, the inequity in caring for the aged is in the superannuation benefits that are heavily targeted towards the wealthy. So that inequity. I guess the third thing that struck me is the figuring. I mean, the fact that I think the starting point is artificial. The budget deficit that they claim from MyEFA is artificially high, double what it was at PFO almost, more than double, I should say.
So just explain that to us, because I think the figure was initially 50.
PFO is the Treasury and Finance estimate of the fiscal position for the 4-year period at the time of the election. And it's an independent, honest assessment by the two departments. MyEFA, which came in, I think, in December, is the government's version of that, and they'd made a number of changes between the two. So the crisis is bigger because the government number was 122 billion over 4 years instead of 55 billion. So
you're saying they exaggerated that crisis?
That was exaggerated. And then, of course, when I look at the numbers, I don't think they make much improvement in the first couple of years. I mean, you take that exaggeration out, and that's about the benefit you get. The problem's been manufactured, of course, to some extent also by the fact that you're abolishing about 20+ billion worth of taxes in terms of mining tax and carbon tax. So that puts a lot of pressure on those budget numbers. And then I look at the forecasts and I see very ambitious forecasts in terms of a very fast pickup in growth back to better than trend growth, 3.5%. I mean, I don't see what it is in the economy is going to give me 3.5% growth. You take the mining sector out. Where's the non-mining sector growth going to come from? Strong employment growth, but with low inflation. So very strong revenue numbers. So we've had a revenue problem for several years now, and the revenue problem is not addressed in this budget, but the expenditure side of it is addressed. So there's inequity or imbalance there as well. And I guess the final point is there's about 80 billion taken out of education and health vis-a-vis the states over a 10-year period. I guess that's putting pressure on the revenue side, ultimately going to drive them to look at ways in which that can be funded by an increase in the GST or some income tax surcharge.
We'll come back to that in a moment. Talk about some of the specifics, in particular the Medical Research Fund. John Hewson, is that a good move?
Excellent.
What do you like about that?
Just the concept of having it. I think if we've got an edge in terms of our international competitive position, it is in brain-based, knowledge-based sort of activities, and we have been at the cutting edge of medical and scientific research. It has been dramatically underfunded in this country, and this is a mechanism by which we can get there. Now, you look at how they started, they take money out of the existing hospital budget, but I mean, I do think, part of the co-payment, which is a clever thing, I think, the bulk of the co-payment does go to that fund. So over time, I think that's a very significant structural change in a medium-term sense, and it's to be welcomed, but it's not funded yet.
Yep.
And it's a fair way to go. And that's one of the features of this budget. Some of the big expenditure commitments that are still sitting out there, infrastructure, disability, for example, national broadband, they're not actually funded in the out years, the years beyond the budget period. So we still have an expenditure problem out there. We don't have an expenditure problem so much now.
And I guess there's a kind of a gauntlet being laid down to the states here. Here's a gap you really can't fund yourselves on existing revenues. This is an invitation for the states to get together and start asking seriously for a change in the rate of the GST.
John, is that the way you see it unfolding?
Well, yes, and it forces them to consider the issue of how this is to be funded and whether it's funded by broadening the GST, increasing the rate, or a proposal in the Audit Commission to give them some capacity to share income tax revenue. I mean, it worries me a bit when you give the states a tax base, because they've got some pretty efficient taxes like land tax and payroll tax, except that they've neutered them over the years by giving concessions everywhere, such that they're no longer efficient tax bases. And you give them an income tax base, they'll neuter that too, and I suspect if they had some more control over the structure of the GST, that would happen. So it's an easy thing to say in principle, this is what we want to do. It's going to be very difficult to produce a sensible outcome, but it does start the process, the inevitable process of negotiation. The crucial thing to come is a federation review plus a tax review, or white papers in both cases, which presumably will go to the whole structure of spending and revenue raising at the three levels of government and give you a sensible medium-term outcome. Now, that's ambitious thinking,
well,
but
something to
that's
look forward
exactly
to, John.
what you've got to look for,
Operated a social safety net for people who really depend on it. And if you're a 29-year-old who loses their job and has no other source of income, in my view, you really need it. Our economy is going through a set of structural changes, which means that low and semi-skilled workers are finding it harder to retain employment. There's more competition from the region. And so to say that we're going to effectively remove a plank of the social safety net completely, such that you have zero income, to me is a very poor step.
The other side of that, excuse me, is that you've got to have the jobs for them to go to.
Yep.
And there's nothing in the budget that tells me where those jobs are going to come from.
And how will this policy work if there was, there's I think about 20% youth unemployment. What if it was going up higher than that?
Yeah, I think the real youth unemployment number is probably higher than 20%, or underemployment and unemployment. And the difficulty is that you're going to make it very difficult for these people in those circumstances. And as Jessica says, they'll either go onto some training scheme, or they'll perhaps try and qualify for a disability benefit or something, rather than actually do what you want them to do under the principle of the policy, which is to get a job.
I mean, the implicit assumption is that these people are finding themselves unemployed because they're not trying hard enough.
That's right.
And I think with an unemployment rate of 5% at the moment, it's a big stretch to believe.
All right. Jess, what about young people who are studying? They will be punished by this budget as well.
Yeah, the uni students will be paying more for fees. Universities are going to be able to deregulate and set their own fees. And then when you're at university, you better make sure that you're learning and increasing your earning capacity, because university students are going to have to repay their help loans at an earlier income point, and you're going to be charged interest, which is higher on that. So helps and HEC debts have been a pretty good loan for people, because it's only been indexed, at about CPI inflation. Now it's going to reflect the government's cost of borrowing, which is almost double. So the longer you sit on that debt, it's going to accumulate over time. So you're going to have to hope that the uni course that you did will actually increase your earning capacity in the future, because you'll be paying it back.
It raises the question, though, is whether that's sustainable. If people don't generate that earning capacity, and those debts continue to mount, it's a problem for 10, 15, 20 years from now. Is what are you going to be doing with that outstanding accumulated debt that they are unable to service and to repay?
There you go.
Look, we're very generous when it comes to major events like tsunamis and so on as a nation,
Yep.
but this comes to the basic position. How do we really see ourselves as a nation? What image do we want to project to the rest of the world? And I don't think this does that very well.
Well, I think that we should keep in mind, though, that what we've seen, I guess, in the last year or two is a staged retreat from a high watermark of aspiration in terms of foreign aid, because